we have a bit of a problem. Conor McGregor no longer has an opponent because Justin Gaethje has chosen to take on Tony Ferguson at UFC 249 on May the 9th on short notice for an interim belt, and the winner of Ferguson versus Gaethje will be taking on Khabib Nurmagomedov in September, and the loser of Ferguson versus Gaethje will be taking on brain damage for probably the rest of their life, because that is going to be an absolute bloodbath and a one-sided beating, in my opinion, from one of two guys. I think it's going to be a bad loss, whoever loses Gaethje versus Ferguson, which means that the loser of that fight is going to need a little bit of time off, which doesn't help our McGregor problem. Also, the loser of that fight is going to be coming off a loss, which also doesn't help our McGregor problem, because they're going to slide down the rankings a bit more, and McGregor's not going to get the credit he deserves. So what does Conor McGregor do next? A lot of people are speculating that the Nate Diaz trilogy should take place. There are a lot of reasons why I think it should. There are a lot of reasons why I think it shouldn't. McGregor, he could fight Nate Diaz. It's an amazing fight. It's the trilogy. Nate Diaz beat McGregor. McGregor beat Nate Diaz. And now we're assuming that McGregor's going to beat Nate Diaz again. Fingers crossed if we want what's best for the UFC. However, McGregor versus Nate Diaz, there's a few problems that I have with that fight. I know for a fact Nate Diaz won't cut to 155 pounds to fight McGregor. And I also know for a fact that McGregor probably won't cut to 155 pounds to fight Nate Diaz, because he doesn't like the sound of a 155 pound cut, even when it benefits him against guys like Donald Cerrone. If McGregor had fought Donald Cerrone at 155, all of the chips would be in his favour. But he didn't do that, which tells me that McGregor has fucked up his body so much from going to 45 that even the thought of going to 55, and it's the same with Anthony Pettis, is not a nice thing. It's not a nice thought. No one wants to cut that weight. McGregor's going to end up fighting Nate Diaz at 170, which kind of annoys me because I'm a bit of an old school head in the fact that I think that your win should be in the division that you're currently in, and at least your last fight should be at the weight class in which you want to fight for the title next, if you know what I mean. If McGregor's going to get a title shot next, I'd like for his fight before that to be at 155 pounds where he wants to get the title shot. I don't know about you guys, I think like that just makes a little bit more sense, and I don't think that Nate Diaz is going to cut down to 155, especially during nowadays where a lot of people are stuck indoors eating. You know, it's not good. You're not going to be looking to go down a weight class at this point in your career, Nate Diaz, especially after that beating you took off Jorge Masvidal. However, there are some good signs for the Nate Diaz trilogy. It's a big fight. Everyone knows who Nate Diaz is. Also, Nate Diaz, in the casual fan's mind, is not coming off a loss right now. In everyone else's who knows anything about fighting, we know what we watched. We watched Nate Diaz get his ass fucking whooped for 3 rounds. Did it look like every guy was slowing down in that fight? Yes, it did. Jorge Masvidal was breathing a little bit heavier, but so was Nate Diaz. I mean, if you're going to tell me that Nate Diaz looked like a cardio machine against Pettis or against Jorge Masvidal, you're just flat out mistaken. Nate Diaz was taking trips to the canvas for no reason, just because he was hurt to the body. Like, I know that a lot of casual fans are going to stick up for Diaz there and say that, it wasn't a real loss. It was just a no contest. Nothing happened. The doctor stepped in before it became a real fight. I mean, that fight between him and Masvidal became a real fight within 10 seconds when Masvidal was beating the shit out of him, in my opinion. So, he is coming off a loss, but to the casuals, he is not, because he technically kind of isn't. Okay, on paper, he technically kind of isn't. A doctor stoppage is not considered a loss by casual fans, and they're going to stick by Nate Diaz for as long as they fucking can, and sing that fucking chorus as long as they fucking can, because they like Nate Diaz. I understand it, and that's a good thing for us, because it means we can help sell Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor, because we don't have one clip of Nate Diaz getting his ass fucking plastered to the canvas and being KO'd and someone getting a nice clean victory over him. So that's not really going to stale the matchup between him and McGregor in a trilogy. My biggest problem is that I know it will happen at 170. And I don't like that, to be honest with you, because I feel like when McGregor does something in MMA, he kind of sets the standard for everyone else. McGregor takes 2 belts, everybody want to take 2 belts. That's just how it works. McGregor does this in record time, everybody wants a record time. It's just kind of how it works. Conor McGregor sets the tone for the rest of the MMA scene, and if Conor McGregor starts setting the tone at, I'm going to fight at whatever weight class I want, and as long as I'm winning, I'm going to get a title shot, then all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing guys jump in weight classes to get title shots in a weight class that they're currently in. I don't understand how that would work, but trust me, whatever McGregor does, other people in the MMA scene and the UFC in general will follow him. So I feel like I don't want this to be the case. I don't want to start seeing Usman and Colby saying, fuck the weight cut, we'll do it at 185 pounds. I don't want to see that shit. You know, I want it to be at the weight class that the belt is held in. Is it just me? I don't want that to happen. And I know that's going to happen if McGregor fights Nate Diaz in a trilogy. However, it would be an amazing fight. Nate Diaz is a tough fight for McGregor. He's always a bad matchup for McGregor. I do think McGregor would beat him this time. So it's actually a good fight in that case, because at least we'll have McGregor coming off a clean win over Nate Diaz, most likely. I know a lot of people would maybe pick Nate Diaz. I would not. I would not at this point pick Nate Diaz against Conor McGregor. That's just me. I think they're at two different parts of their career. I think Nate Diaz is kind of clinging on at this point and only coming back for fights that intrigue him. I think Conor McGregor has a real passion to try and get the belt back because he's still in his prime right now. And Nate Diaz, as much as he's not the oldest guy in the world, he's been doing this for a very, very long time, and he's been taking beatings for a very, very long time. There comes a time where you don't want to do that anymore. And I think that's sort of the situation Nate Diaz is in. So I don't think that Nate Diaz Conor McGregor trilogy is going to be happening next unless it happens at 170. And I would much rather another name take on Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier. They have history with each other. Dustin Poirier is also coming off a loss. There is no name I'm about to tell you guys where it is an ideal situation. There just isn't, unless Gaethje wins against Ferguson and wants to defend his interim belt against Conor McGregor, which hopefully means that McGregor gets the interim belt and then takes on Khabib. But that will never happen, because we know guys want the belt, because if you defend against McGregor with a belt, you're going to make a lot of pay-per-view points. However, the Dustin Poirier fight is very interesting for McGregor. I like that matchup. I think they've got a lot of history with each other. They fought each other all the way back in 2015, I believe it was, maybe 2014, which seems... It doesn't feel like 6 years ago or 5 years ago whenever they fought each other. Jesus Christ. But either way, that's a good fight. They have history. It's a good rematch to make. Conor McGregor beat him in the first round, though, by KO. You know? I understand the Khabib-McGregor rematch because it went to the fourth round. McGregor at least won a round, you know? But Poirier got KO'd in the first round flat and nothing happened, and he only landed an inside leg kick the entire fight. I don't know how you could sell that rematch other than maybe just go off of Poirier's successes at 155 pounds and try and paint that narrative. I don't know if McGregor would take the Poirier fight right now, because how can he do it better than a first round KO? And why would he risk trying to do that? I don't think he's going to take on Dustin Poirier. I don't think he's going to take on Nate Diaz. And I don't think that's anything to do with him. I just think that they're not really the best situations right now. And I think he'd much rather wait. But I want to keep McGregor active. I think he wants to stay active. I just don't think he likes what he's looking at in the division right now. You've got Dustin Poirier, and I think the way McGregor's mind is working right now is, what will the people say about this one? You know? Because he must have thought that when he called out Frankie Edgar. There's no way he would think that everyone would just be A-okay with that, and they wouldn't have any problem with him taking on Frankie Edgar, the much smaller, way out of prime opponent. He's going to take on Dustin Poirier. He's going to think to himself, right, people will say he's coming off a loss. People will say he doesn't want it anymore since losing for his belt and his his only title opportunity of his career. The big moment of his career, Poirier's now coming off that big moment and a bit of a whooping against Khabib. What are people going to say? So I think that McGregor actually is going to look down the rankings and maybe start twisting some words with Dan Hooker, maybe Charles Oliveira, because I'm telling you this, guys, I was looking through the rankings the other day and I thought to myself, he might even call out Paul Felder. I would much rather see him face Dustin Poirier than any of those guys. However, Dan Hooker's a streaking contender that no one can make any excuses about Conor McGregor fighting. If Conor McGregor fought Charles Oliveira, no one would call him a pussy. That's guaranteed. So I think if Conor McGregor's, he's got a big decision to make here. Does he take on Poirier and Nate Diaz, which in my opinion are the bigger fights, so the risk is kind of worth the reward because it's a much bigger fight than any of the other ones in the division? Or does he take on a lower risk fight, but without the height of the reward that comes with beating Nate Diaz and beating Dustin Poirier? I think he's going to go with Dustin Poirier. I really do, and that leaves a lot of guys left out in the lightweight division. However, I think that's what they're going to do. The rematch makes sense. Number 2 versus number 3. The winner gets the title shot after number 1 fights for it. I mean, it just makes every level of sense in the world. If that's not how a championship division works, then I don't know how a division works, to be honest with you. But Conor McGregor's got some thinking to do. I think he's going to go with Dustin Poirier. I don't think he's going to go with Nate Diaz because I think people know at this point the Diaz fight would be big. I think the hardcore fans especially, maybe not the casual fans yet, but the hardcore fans especially kind of know that Nate Diaz ain't title elimination bout. You know? Like, maybe he wasn't even a title elimination bout for Masvidal, in my opinion. Like, I don't think that Nate Diaz was ever a title oh, you beat Pettis and you're ranked number 8. That's not a title elimination bout. I don't understand how Masvidal got a title shot after that, but you know what? They made the BMF title, they hyped it up, and now Masvidal's getting a title shot. And also Masvidal beat Till, Masvidal beat Ben Askren. He had other wins as well, but Nate Diaz alone for Conor McGregor right now does not tell me that he's going to beat Khabib. I'd rather see him fight Poirier. I think that the fans would actually rather see him fight Poirier. I think the Nate Diaz fight is always a fight that can happen, let's say if McGregor loses one of these fights coming up, because that's a big fact. Anything could happen in MMA. McGregor could go out there and get chinned by Poirier. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think McGregor would chin Poirier in the first round. However, McGregor could go out there, get a cut over his eyebrow, blood spraying out, starts slipping around a little bit, falls into a dash choke from Poirier. You never know what could happen, and then he's going to need a bounce back opponent, and that's when you bring in Nate Diaz for a trilogy. When McGregor's coming off a loss. They should have done the Nate Diaz trilogy before they made the Cowboy fight, in my opinion. However, I'd much rather see him fight Dustin Poirier right now, because I think he's the higher threat matchup. He's number 2 in the division. I don't think McGregor's going to be looking to stoop down the division and give these Oliveiras and Dan Hookers any kind of chance, because he'll get nothing for beating them in the casual fans' eyes. In the hardcore fans' mind, they would love him if he took on Charles Oliveira and beat him. And I think he actually would beat Charles Oliveira, because any elite striker beats Charles Oliveira because Charles Oliveira doesn't have great takedowns. Oliveira needs to beat you on the feet and have you shoot on him. That's how he wins fights. And if you don't believe me, watch any one of his fights. That's exactly how it works. However, I think McGregor should take on Poirier in a rematch. I think they could talk back and forth and sell that shit. I think Poirier's name has never been bigger right now since fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think everyone knows he's game as fuck. He rocked Khabib. They can play that footage, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think he really rocked Khabib, but he did rattle Khabib a little bit and made Khabib sort of spiral backwards into the cage and get his bearings quickly. I don't think Khabib was majorly concussed. However, I do think Khabib was hurt in that moment. He was definitely rattled quite a bit. They could play that footage. Hey, Dustin Poirier just fought Khabib. Don't worry about him getting choked out. Look at this punch he landed. They can build any narrative they want. And I think that if Conor McGregor wants a title shot next, I'd favour Dustin Poirier over a Nate Diaz trilogy. And I'd definitely favour Dustin Poirier over Dan Hooker or Charles Oliveira. Dustin Poirier rematch it is. I'm down. I'm 100% down. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. Goodbye.